G'day ladies and gents, welcome back to another video on my channel. So let's get off with the topic here. So I'm going to be doing the Haida history lesson today. I'm very sorry that I've not posted the video in 2 bloody weeks. It was because I had work to do for school. I ended up getting sick because there's a bug going around. The autumn flu or something that they call it, and yeah, so I've been all crowded with a bunch of school stuff and whatnot. But you know what, it's a long weekend, and I thought, you know, I'm just going to skip the World of Warships video and just get on with the Haida history lesson. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So right now I'm on my Photos app. So I did save a couple of pictures of Haida just to show you guys a few of them. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to explain to you pretty much what characteristics about Haida that are interesting, such as, like, you know, what kind of battles did it take place in, how heavy is it, how long is it, how many people, or crew, sorry, did she have, how big were her shells, how heavy did they weigh, what kind of guns does she have, you know, what's her top speed, that kind of stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to explain to you pretty much what this ship was and what she did and how she became the most famous Canadian ship that there is. So anyway, here is a decent picture of a tribal class destroyer. Now, Haida was 1 out of 27 built. There were 16 for Britain, 3 for Australia, and then there were 7 for Canada. And all of the other ones were scrapped or sunk. Haida was going to be scrapped, but then we all saved her. So, yeah. Now, she was not built in Canada. All of the tribals were built in England. Haida was built in Newcastle. So here we have a good look at it here. So let's just do a little zoom in. So here we are. This is her camouflage for the Atlantic. She did not serve in the Pacific. She stayed in the Atlantic. She did end up going around Japan. There's a story about Haida almost sinking in a typhoon in Japan. And yeah, so as we look here, you have your 4-inch, 4.7-inch guns. These could fire a 90-pound brass shell. That would be about the size, let's say, okay, so let's put this to a comparison here. I don't really have anything to measure, but the shells would usually be as long as, let's say, going from the bottom of your foot and halfway to your leg. So it would pass your kneecap and it would go just a little bit up to where the thigh would be. And these shells could even be longer than that. And Haida's guns were actually used for anything. These guns could be used to sink submarines. They could be used to shoot down aircraft. They could be used to shoot trains. So let's name the gun. So this is A gun. That's B gun. And the rear ones here, they don't really go by a whole lot of alphabet. This one is not, like, they don't go A, B, C, D. This is either Y and X, or something like that. I'm not too sure. I only know that the front ones are named B and A. B was actually, if you do actually go to the historical site, it's down by Bayfront Park, right beside the military base. You will see the ship. It's a museum now. She was decommissioned completely and out of service. So she went out of service on the 22nd of February 1964 and was decommissioned in 1963. So yeah, on the I think it was the 13th of October 1963 when Haida was decommissioned and out of war, and then fully out of service in 64. So let's get up to some statistics here. So we all know HMCS HAIDA is a tribal class destroyer that served in the Royal Canadian Navy, or RCN, Royal Canadian National. From 1943, that's when she was launched, all the way up to 63. So she participated in the Second World War, she participated in the Cold War, and pretty much, yeah. But she also served in Korea, through the Korean War. That's actually where my my boss and commander, actually, he served aboard this ship in the 50s. And the guy has a lot of stories. He's actually the one who told me when Haida almost sank. So she's the only surviving tribal class destroyer out of 27 vessels constructed. Sadly. Because, you know, all the others were sunk or scrapped. So Haida's the last remaining one. And no other ones. Now, there is a Canadian corvette called the H.M.C.S Sackville in Halifax. If you want to go visit her, she's all the way down there. But Haida is a lot bigger, and probably going to be a bit more nicer than a corvette. So, yeah, let's just get on with the statistics here. So, she was ordered on the 5th of April 1940, and her builders are Vickers Armstrong's LRT, or LTD, sorry, LRT, god damn me, I apologize for that, it's LTD, Newcastle. So, that's where she was launched. Pretty much any tribal class ship, they were all built in Newcastle, England. So she was laid down on the 29th of September 1941, and officially launched on 25th of August 1942, but she did not set out to sea until the 30th of August 1943. So, yeah. Next up, she then, after, like, World War II ended, so she lasted all that long. She was then decommissioned on the 20th of March 1946, and then she was refitted, so she had a couple new modifications to her. So they kept the A gun and B gun, removed these, so they kind of made a catwalk way going from, I believe it is, right around this area here, and it cuts across over top of the ship. Now, I'm trying to remember if that, yeah, it's okay, so it's right, and it cuts across here, so it's a catwalk, and then over here were then the guns, the same anti-aircraft weapons, and then there was another catwalk that cut across here, going over the torpedoes, and then this was where the emergency steering position was. Now, the captain would always be around this area here, and right here is where the bridge would be. Now, you see, if this area gets hit, and the captain's in there, you're screwed. So, they always made sure that he was around at least in this area, so then if the bridge was hit, he wouldn't be killed. So, yeah. So if the bridge was ever destroyed, they at least had another part to see the ship. It'd be pretty hard to see because you got two big-ass smokestacks in your way, but it's not that bad of a problem. So anyway, this is the mess deck area, but there's also the radio room 1, which would be in this area as well. And then over here is the second deck, where more mess decks are. Below that are the fridge flats, so that's where they kept all the things refrigerated and whatnot. That's also where they kept the sonar beam, which would be right underneath it. So that was used to detect subs. Destroyers were very good at that. Very good at it. Next up, we have the Captain's Day Cabin. So the Captain's Day Cabin would be around here, in this area right there. Below it is the wardroom and the officers' quarters. So the crew would be all the way up here, and then the officers would be sleeping in bunks in this area here. The wardroom, which was all the way down here in this area, the captain was not allowed in. Reason is, they don't want him in there. That was the only room that the captain could not enter. That was the officer's personal spot. He could not go down there. Anyway, here is where these two guns here were removed. Now, in So once she was then recommissioned on the 15th of March 1952, she had these two guns taken off. They replaced this gun spot with a anti-aircraft radar-activated gun. So let's go to that one then. So now we're going to go to here. So this is a better looking image. So this is going to give you a little bit more pointers here. So you got A gun, B gun, and then here is where some of the better parts are. So mess decks are here. Boiler room 1 is over here. 2 and 3 are all there. Feed tanks, and the engine room, which is probably the biggest room aboard the ship, actually did not have a whole lot of men in it. It was usually only about 12, maybe even 7. So odd. So then here is where your anti-aircraft gun is, so let's get a better look at that. So that's what happened with the other guns. They were taken off. And then over here had the squid. Now the squid were technically like depth charges, except they could be propelled. And they were used to actually blow up submarines. That's what they were for. But the thing was is that they would launch over top the deck, so it would actually kind of scare them in. And these things were huge. They looked like big yellow bombs. And they would be dropped into the water. And these things were propelled, so they were like a depth charge kind of mixed with a torpedo in a way. So yeah, and then this was the anti-aircraft gun that was radar activated. So this is kind of another example of the Haida there. So now you got some of that. Next up, she was then, so yeah, recommissioned 15th of March 1952, sorry, and then after the Korean War and the Cold War, she was then decommissioned on the 11th of August, October, I'm terribly sorry about that, 1963, and then officially went out of service on the 22nd of February 1964. So her identification, so let's go to that. So she was known either as GE63 or 215, which is her identification number. So now this is a better look at what she looks like here. So this is her in all her mesmerizing glory. So we have your 4.7-inch gun right there, and number 2. So that's A and B. And then over here, these are all parts of the bridge. So captain would sometimes be up there. If not, you'd be in the emergency steering position over here. The wheelhouse, which was always in here, it was actually kind of hard to see out of it because you only had 2 tiny windows on 2 sides. So if you were going to be in there, you'd kind of be staring at a wall unless you looked over to your right and left, and you'd be looking out of those 2 holes there. Now the reason for that, you don't really want the guy to know where you're going. You just want him to do his job and keep the ship afloat and try not to get sunk. Next up, so over in the back there, that's where the squids are, and that's your radar activated gun right there. So this is Haida's Cold War refit. So she was 215 for the Cold War, and then G63 for her Second World War fight. Now, this is just something from World of Warships. You can get that anywhere. Now, here's some of Haida's distant cousins. So now these were all Canadian ships. This is a river-class destroyer. Now, these were very small ships, very tiny, and could easily be sunk. So now here's another design of Haida. So here we have it again, but it's in a little bit of a more different kind of picture in a way. So there's not really a whole lot to it. Now, her honors were she served in the Arctic from 43 to 45. So she followed up all the way up there, and it's pretty bloody cold, but still managed to fight through it all. She then fought in the English Channel in 1944, and then Normandy in 1944 as well. She fought in the Bay of Biscay in 1944, and then in Korea for 52 and 53. So, yeah, she is a well-working vessel. Now, there's not really a whole lot of pictures that I have of the Haida here, because, you know, there's not really a whole lot out there. I tried to find a couple of the radio room. Haida had 4. Radio room 1, 2, 3, and 4. Radio room 2 was located in this area of the ship. Radio room 1 would be up here. Number 3, I think, would be somewhere around here. And then number 4, I have no clue where it is. So, interesting. So let's go back to this image. So, radio room 1 would be in this area. Now, next time I do actually end up doing another one of these, I will then try and show you a full-on tour of Haida. So what I'll do is I'll bring the GoPro and I'll do an entire sweep of the ship, telling you guys everything I know about certain parts. Now, I work mainly in the radio room, and I work with the radios. I fool around with them, and I don't know yet. Yeah, they actually work. I managed to get a signal on them. Now, those radios were made in 1941, 1943, so they're old. And if you look it up, you guys can pause this right now, and if you want, you can look up CSR5 Murakami, or just like type up CSR5 radio receiver. And what might pop up is a radio that looks like a rectangle. It's got all kinds of buttons on it. I sadly do not have a picture of it. But what I will do though is next time I do end up going to the ship, which will be in a year because she's closed right now, I will do an entire video of the radio room and I will explain how I work it all. So anyway, let's get to some general characteristics. So she's a tropical class destroyer. Her displacement is 1,959 long tons. So that's usually the equivalent weight of how much a destroyer would usually end up weighing of this particular standard. Now, her normal standard was just 1,990 tons. That's just standard. Now, if she was fully loaded with everything on it, she would end up weighing about 2,559 tons. That's her deep load tons. Her long tons is 2,519. Her length was 377 feet long, or 114.9 meters long. So practically she was 115 meters long, which is pretty good, as you can tell. Now, if you put this ship up against the KMS Bismarck, now Bismarck was a massive battleship. Now, if you guys haven't heard of that ship, it was technically Germany's top dog at the time. The Bismarck was almost as long as Titanic. Bismarck was around 800 and fuck's sake, I think 49 feet long. Titanic was 889 feet. So Bismarck was almost as long as Titanic, but Bismarck was 30 feet wider and weighed 57,000 tons. Titanic weighed 45,000. Now, Bismarck's guns and shells were huge. A battleship's shell would weigh as much as your car and would be about the size of a car. You know, like they were fucking huge. The shells aboard Haida were very small, and these guns were all man-powered. Each gun had about 27 men working on it, so you'd have 15 chaps up here, and then 12 downstairs working on it. So then, the men down below would grab the shells from the ammunition hoist, which would be in this area here. So the ammunition would all be down below, and those would be hoisted up by manpower. Everything's all manpower. And then these guys would then push the shells up with one arm, because they got so used to it, and every 1 minute, there were 15 shells coming out of that gun. So think about that. 15 shells in 1 minute. That is extremely fast. It takes a battleship to... It takes like, I think, 20 seconds in total to reload its gun. But these guys are firing 15 shells a minute. So that's pretty damn fast. So these guys were very trained and they knew what they were doing. They were also pretty pumped, so yeah. It takes a while for a battleship to reload. These guys take 1 minute. Well, actually no. These guys take about a second each. Pretty much. Because they're firing 15 every minute. Next up, her beam is 37 feet and 6 inches. Or 11.4 meters. Her drop is 13 feet, or 4.0 meters. And then propulsion. So let's go to another image where she's dry docked in a way. Now, Haida's propellers have been taken off, and if you go see her propellers will be sitting out, and these are pretty big. But they can be pretty small too. So her propulsion, which is right here. So she had 2 shafts and 3 drum type boilers. Now the boiler rooms are actually quite crowded. They're very small. So if you have claustrophobia, you would not want to be going and working in that kind of space. It was hot, it was loud, it sucked, you know, because you're in such a confined space. It's dark in there too, and it smells bad. You're breathing in bad fumes and all that kind of stuff. It's so crowded in there, and it's noisy. And it sucks, but that's kind of what they had to go through, you know. So, yeah. So this ship was powered by steam. Pretty much any ship at the time was all steam powered. Now her engine room is massive. It's the biggest room aboard the ship, and it is right here in this area. And it takes up from pretty much right here all the way to here. So that's how big it is. And that's the biggest room aboard the ship. And these are her torpedo tubes. Now, here's the thing. She never fired off any of her torpedoes at all. There were 5 of them, each weighing 5 tons. Or 5,000 pounds. Now, the reason why she never fired them is because there was no need to shoot them off. Now, every other ships, like, of her class, her sisters, all fired them. She was the only one who didn't. Reason is, never found the need to shoot them off. That was it. She had a top speed of 37 miles an hour, or 36.5 knots. That's pretty fast for a ship like this. Now, Haida actually could have became like a light cruiser of some sort, because she has the power to be one. But she stayed in the destroyer class. But she could have had the potential to become a cruiser. She really could have, because a ship of this size usually would not end up being a destroyer. Usually they could end up being cruisers, like light cruisers or something. But Haida stayed in the destroyer class. So her official crew number was about 259 men, 14 officers, and 245 ratings. So that's quite a bit. Now, that's kind of a small ship too. Now, if you guys have heard of the HMS Victory, it is a ship that was built in 1765, and it's massive. And it's a lot smaller than the Haida is. But the thing is that that ship is a sail ship, and it has a crew of 850 men. Haida, on the other hand, is 10 times bigger than Victory, and definitely a lot more powerful, but only has 259 crew members on board her. That's not a whole lot. So, yeah, pretty small, pretty big. But, moving on. So, next up, we have a 1 type 2 68 radar. So that's a processing ones. So these were used to detect either submarines, other ships in the area, even aircraft. All kinds. She had tons of radars. Mainly these would be up in here, right underneath the bridge. So now these were there. It's called the operations room. That's also where the wheelhouse is. And those guys would be detecting submarines. That's also where they would map out their routes and whatnot. So a lot of things were happening up in the bridge, especially in the radio rooms as well. So she had quite a bit of sonars and whatnot, and radars. She had a Type 285 fire control radar. So her probably tallest one would be all the way up here, her control tower. So now let's go to that. So let's go to this image. So there is probably the biggest radar on board the ship, or her sonar, which is detecting all kinds of things in the area. Submarines, aircraft, all kinds. It will detect anything. Now let's go to her armament. So, she has 4.7-inch guns, or 119mm 45 MKX 11 twin guns, which would be A gun, B gun, and so forth. So that would be these. Pretty good ones too. She had a quadruple mount of 40mm pounder guns. So now those would be located right in this area. So those were flat guns, and they were also located on the bridge. They were taken off and replaced with the Morse code lights. Right there, those black things up there. And those guns would be located, and they're actually still there. So if you look at that image, you'll see it, and over here. So those were your 40mm pounder guns. She then had a 20mm cannons, and one quad launcher with a MK1X torpedoes. So those are her torpedo tubes. Now her torpedoes are 21-inch or 53mm torpedo tubes. So those would be located right there. So those are the 5,000 pound torpedoes. Each she had 5. And I think they went by alphabetical order or something like that. I kind of forget how they went, but each torpedo had a name. And they were controlled all the way from up here, or it could be controlled down there. You'd have a couple guys sitting in a few seats, and they could fire them from that position. Also, including the catwalk, so there it is right there if you can see it. That was not there in the 40s. So this is how the men had a quicker way of getting across the ship, a little bit easier than having to run down the stairs, run up a ladder, and then go to different spots. So that's why they put the catwalk in. Now, the Haida did have jet charges, but she used squids. Those were a lot better. So, yeah, her squid motards, so that's what they were, and these things would detonate. So once they hit something, they would then explode, and you would actually see it come up through the water, and that's how you would know, okay, it hit something, because you would then see a second explosion. But these things were huge, and packed a pretty big punch, so that's why the Navy loved them. So, yeah, that's pretty much what we got. So it's pretty interesting, actually, once you get to know about your ship. Now, what I will do soon enough is, if you guys do like the history lesson sort of thing, so this is pretty much the only one that I've done so far, but if you guys did enjoy this, then do let me know, because I will definitely do quite a bit. You guys can also follow me on Instagram. It is blackpearl945, and you guys can request to follow me there and DM me, and ask me what kind of videos you would like me to make, or continue to make. So, yeah. Sorry about the 2-week friggin' delay. You know, school's a pain in the ass, but you know what? You gotta deal with it somehow. But I managed to get this history lesson done for you guys, as I did say on FSX. If I do have the time, I might do another FSX video. I got my throttle to work again, so we're all good to go on that end. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and do let me know if you guys want to see more historical videos on ships or aircraft or something like that. But yeah, do take care guys, and I will see you on the next video. Cheers.